So our inspirational speaker today is Ed Katz, and he's the managing principal at Catnip Marketing, a multi-award-winning full-service advertising and public relations agency. He and his teams have won over 100 industry awards in the past 20 plus years in categories from public relations to crisis communications to integrated marketing effectiveness and TV, radio, and digital creative. Catnip's digital team is certified by Google, Yelp, and Bing, putting them in the top 3% of all agencies in North America. Ed is a graduate of Syracuse University with a dual major in marketing and film, and he founded Catnip Marketing in 2008. After building a previous agency he co-founded to be a top agency in Connecticut and selling his half of it. Catnip Marketing works mostly with entrepreneurs and small businesses, usually within the arts, B2B, B2C, entertainment, government, healthcare, legal, media, nonprofit, and professional services sectors. He has featured articles and awards and things that were all listed in the bio for this event, so I encourage you to read that. But he is also the theater and film critic for WICC AM was in 2017 and 2018, and is a producer for The King's Speech, the play. So with that, thank you, Ed, for joining us today. And I am going to turn it over to you and let you have the floor.
Thanks so much. Appreciate being here. And thanks again for the referral, Robert. Always good to see you, Robert. All right, so I'm going to do a share screen and got it here and go through public relations and how it can help your business. Most people don't really know what public relations is or does. I'm going to cover that so you get a good sense of how it can help, because people are more familiar with traditional advertising and now social media. This is different, although it does use some of those elements. All right, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, so here's a quote from Bill Gates. I don't know if you're familiar with that one. It may be new to many of you, but I always thought that was kind of cool because it's not what you would have expected from Bill Gates. All right, so you heard about me, so I'm not going to go through that. All right, so there's really 4 types of public relations. Owned media are things that you control yourself. Website, podcast, things like that. If you do a radio broadcast, and if you create any white papers, things like that, those are things you own. Shared is obviously through social media. Now, earned media is what most people think of when they think of more traditional public relations, getting news media coverage, having an outside party endorse your business or your personal brand. And then paid media is promotional. And nowadays, the line gets blurred a lot. When you see a positive story on a client, is it something they're paying for, or is it something they just got as coverage? And that's kind of promotional, advertorial, and it's a bit of a gray area in public relations, but it is often considered certainly to be a part of it. So the quote from Wikipedia is that public relations is the practice of managing and disseminating information to the public in order to affect their perception. And it doesn't say to improve their perception, because sometimes it can be negative. Sometimes there's instances when you want to, for example, and I've done work in this area, working with lobbyists to pass a bill, you want to kind of throw negatives out there or
Did we lose him?
He's a statue.
I thought maybe it was on my end. Oh no, Ed.
this is where we were, right?
There we go.
This where we were, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so 5 things it can do. It can help develop a company's brand identity and sometimes enhance it as well. And you want to generate consumer interest for what your, well, whoever your target audience is. In general, this is from Forbes, they were talking about for consumers, but you want to also build trust. And public relations helps because you've got the media covering your company as opposed to you just talking about your company. So there's the credibility that comes from that particular media outlet that kind of gives you the trust when they write a story that's positive about you. It can help improve valuations by reinforcing positive images of your company. And it can also help, and this is a big thing for Forbes, of course, who put this out here, generate investor interest. So especially if you want to sell your business, you want positive PR kind of flooding your audiences before you're looking to actually sell. Okay, so these are some of the basics. So positioning your company as top of mind, that's critical. And that takes kind of constant public relations work. And you can do that yourself. It's putting things out there, whether it's on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube videos are terrific too, but reinforcing and reminding people who you are and what your business is and what you do. And testimonials are a great way to do that as well. So that all helps with top of mind awareness and show you're growing, position you as an industry leader. And you'll see in number 2 we have here, subject matter experts. If you've ever heard of an SME, you want to be positioned as a leader in your field and stand out from your competitors. So writing a white paper, getting interviewed, I've had clients interviewed in the New York Times and Wall Street Journal. That's huge credibility. So that really makes an impression and kind of helps separate the client from their competitors. Obviously improves the perception of professionalism and helps grow. So if you are getting new clients, if you don't tell people about it, they don't know. So that's part of what public relations can help you do. So communicate that. Okay, so here are 7 times, and this is an important slide for everybody. Maybe take a screenshot of it. 7 times when it makes sense for you to issue a press release for any size business. If you have a new hire, that's a perfect opportunity. You're talking about your business. You're showing how you're growing because you're adding employees. Getting a big new client or a contract, same kind of thing. As long as you obviously get permission from the client, you can promote that. Any kind of a company event, an award, promotion, and then achieving a milestone. I've got a 15th anniversary coming up for my business in May, so I'll be putting out word about that. Media tends to like covering those kinds of things. You reaching a goal, or if you add a new location, those are all great opportunities for public relations and to issue a press release. And then of course, pro bono work. If you're giving something or doing something, to help the community, that's always a great reason to put out a press release as well. Any questions at this point? Okay, I don't see any. Jennifer, if you see any, just flag me and let me know, because
Ed, I have a quick question.
Sure, go right ahead.
Have you noticed, in the last however many years or so, it seems like media outlets have really taken a beating in the credibility department. Have you noticed an effect on these types of things, or is that more just kind of politics and other newsworthy topics?
It's a great point. It's a great question, and there's sort of a gray area for an answer. Yes, in the media has taken a huge hit in as far as its credibility when it comes to politics. I don't want to get too much into politics, but I'll share a story that a former news director of one of the big networks, a senior VP of news, told me that he felt all the media outlets, the big ones, are biased. Almost all of them to the left, Fox News to the right. He said, I said, who's not? And he said, well, maybe 2. He said, Bloomberg and the BBC. So, okay. So yeah, from that standpoint, from a credibility standpoint, from a political standpoint, most people have a perception that the news media is biased somewhat politically. but that tends not to generally affect most businesses, the way they look at them. Now, granted, Wall Street Journal is more pro-business, obviously Forbes, Bloomberg, they're all pro-business. But, the New York Times never would be considered pro-business, but if they write a positive story on you, whether you agree with their political slant or not, that's a huge win. So that's where I hope that answers your question, because I think from a business standpoint, if you're communicating about your business, any positive news media you get is good, whether it's with a media outlet you tend to agree with or not. And it's polarizing. If someone is appearing on one news media outlet, well, maybe half the people hate that media outlet and the other half love it. That's something, but I don't think anyone looks negatively on a business that gets positive coverage, whether it's Fox or MSNBC. I don't think that's going to hurt you. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, sure. All right, so writing and sending a press release. This is kind of a little guide here. You plan the timing and you work backwards from when you actually need it to hit the media. So the basics, the 5 basics have to be covered, really 6: who, what, when, where, why, and how. And if you don't have a list of media contacts, it's always good to keep that handy and just kind of start a file, whether it's an Excel spreadsheet or even a Word document. And when you see a story written on your industry, if you see the reporter's contact info, or look it up and just kind of keep them on a list. So when you're ready to have a press release, you have a good list of people who to send it to. And then how is your story relevant? Is it relevant nationally or is it regionally? Wire services like PR Newswire, they're not outrageously expensive, but they're not cheap. It's going to cost several $100s to put it out there, depending on how much content you put in it. If you have several photos, it'll cost more. If you have video, it'll cost more. But usually just 1 or 2 photos and 2-3 paragraphs, and then an about section about your business on the bottom. That's pretty much it. If you can get it in under 500 words, it's a lot more affordable to issue a press release through a wire service. But have everything ready. If you get asked, because sometimes a reporter who does a story will call and ask follow-up questions, and you want to make sure you are ready, or whoever you want in your company to be the spokesperson. What I found now, and this is kind of a recent trend, really since COVID hit, is the news media, almost all the media outlets have cut their staff back. So especially in local news, I've worked a lot in Connecticut, some in Washington, D.C., and then here in Florida, where I am now. Getting the local media to cover is harder if you don't have stuff you can actually give them to use on the air. So when I have a client and we're doing a story, I have B-roll, which is just running footage, just actual video that can be used kind of anywhere, that shows the client's location and some interactions and people in it. It's all pre-approved and ready to go, but we've shot it. That never used to happen before COVID. Before COVID, the media would have to shoot it themselves, but they've cut back on their staff. So now they will accept what's called B-roll footage, which is stuff we provide to them. And you can ask them to just include, where it came from. So you get your client's name up there, courtesy of XYZ company on the screen. So that's a phenomenal win, that they're actually using your footage to do a news story on you, because you know exactly what it's going to look like. You're not going to get any potential negative surprises. So in the press release, though, be as succinct as possible. Usually just 2-3 paragraphs are good. You want to try to keep it generally under 500 words. And then this is a good one. Number 8, make sure you're aware of this. Every business should do this. You have a Google alert set up on yourself, your business, and your competitors. Make sure you do this. If you take one thing away from this, if you don't want to ever do a press release on your business for whatever reason, at least do this. You want to know what's being put out there about you, yourself, your business, and your competitors. And it's free and easy. All you need is a Google account. Any questions on anything here so far? Okay. Okay, so now this is another thing that many businesses don't ever need this, but you never know. Sometimes you will, and the larger your business gets, the higher the probability that something's going to happen with an employee or an incident, or you may need crisis communications. So having a plan in place ahead of time is the best way to mitigate or possibly even prevent a crisis. But you're going to want to have it whenever you're introducing anything new. You have to have things ready to go just in case things don't go well. I mean, I'm sure you've heard the tech term, version 1.0 is never having to say you're sorry, because you're going to be coming out with something to follow it up right after. But having something ready from a media standpoint to talk about, if this happens, then this will happen. So if something bad happens with a product you're releasing, are you ready to answer questions about it and make sure whoever is going to be the spokesperson is properly trained and prepared to handle any of those questions. Sometimes that will even involve role playing and recordings. And I've done that. I've done crisis communications work with everyone, big companies like Pfizer, Anthem, Blue Cross Blue Shield, a lot of politicians, a lot of spokespeople for different companies, state agencies as well, a lot of state agency work. And the CDC, I did a project with the CDC, and it wasn't a crisis thing, but we did do some media coaching for that as well. So crisis communications and a plan for it can help you in a position if there's a huge hit on your industry, if you're in some industry that is getting a lot of criticism from the media for whatever reason something happens. If you're ready for it, you can position yourselves as the leader because you have answers when the others are scrambling around to try to find them or get a plan in place. So, and that's another way that it'll enhance your company's reputation and position you as the subject matter experts for your industry. All these are good, again, to facilitate a merger or acquisition and improve relations with your investors and stakeholders. That's pretty much it. That's what I wanted to cover for you. My contact info is up here. I'm happy to take any questions you may have on this as well. And I guess I can do a stop screen share now. Okay, here we go.
So Ed, I just want to say thank you for that, because I think we get in a routine with what we're doing and we forget that there are other opportunities to share, to communicate, and we just get into our pattern. So I appreciate the breadth of what you shared, just for me, getting me thinking about other opportunities that I haven't been utilizing.
Mm-hmm. No, and I appreciate it. Again, most people aren't familiar with this, even in business. I've even talked to people who tell me, from other parts of the country, I meet them on network, and they have an ad agency or they work at an ad agency, and I ask them about public relations, and they say, oh, we're full service. And I said, oh, so you do public relations? They're like, no, we don't do that. I'm like, are you kidding me? But so it's not as common as I think it should be. So I think it's an important, part of the marketing field to make sure we cover.
Absolutely. So we have a few minutes for questions or comments. If anybody has one, go ahead, Denise.
Hi, I really enjoyed that. It was really organized and very easy to understand and go through. I'm actually a sales coach. So obviously I know a little bit about PR, but I usually refer people out because I want to stick to my core.
Sure.
But I'm getting ready to do something kind of large. So I know a lot of people. I was talking to our local business review and talking about, what it was that I was doing and saying I was about ready to launch sometime this spring. And they basically said to me, there are no unpaid spaces in our newspaper. So I guess I would love your comment. And is that typical now? I mean, like
it's not typical, but it's more typical than it used to be. Right. Yeah, I've seen that. And it's just really to survive, because a lot of the media outlets and especially the niche ones, they can't make it on more traditional journalism. So they have to get paid. It's cool. We call it pay to play. To get coverage, you have to pay something. So they'll give you an ad and an article. Usually that's the way they tend to do it.
So the best thing to do is just say you're in agreement to some kind of advertising.
Yeah, I mean, if that's the key voice for your industry, if that's the kind of the media outlet of record, then you're sort of trapped. I mean, you may be able to work something out with them. Usually it's negotiable to an extent, but you know, if you're a nonprofit, for example, they tend to be a little more lenient on their policy for it. But if you're a for-profit, all bets are off. You know, they kind of that's how they make their money, and that's how they feed their family. So they're less concerned with just more traditional journalism and more like, well, if you can pay me more, then we'll give you more coverage. And that's just the way it is. It's not great. I'm not happy about it, but I've seen it, and you know, sometimes with clients, it does make sense to actually to do it. But yeah,
ahead,
Thank
it's
you.
not ideal. I'll agree with that. It's not ideal.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I've worked with several book authors, so sometimes that
I'm also that.
yeah, that does happen. Yeah, I've worked with about 15 book authors. I've gotten some nice bestsellers, and actually one client hired me to turn his book series into a TV show, not to actually do it, but he wanted me to do PR and advertising to get the right people who greenlight those kinds of programs to do it. And it took almost 2 years, but it's now an Amazon series. You can see Big Dogs on Amazon Prime. We got it made, and it took a while, and it's actually pretty good, though. The last episode, the director kind of screwed it up, and it's not as great in the last episode, but it's like an 8-episode miniseries. And anyway, it got done, so I was very happy, and the client was thrilled. So
That's a great story.
yeah.
All right, John, go ahead, and then we'll move into our breakout rooms.
Good morning, Ed. Thank you for the information today. It was really well put together. I was curious your thoughts on websites like Help a Reporter Out.
Sure. A specific question about it?
I see it hit or miss for my clients, so I was curious just what your thoughts were.
Sure. What type of clients do you have?
I have anything from small businesses to nonprofits to startups to state government. So
Okay.
it's all across the board. I'm all paid cinema advertising, but occasionally clients will just ask, where should I go for, or where can I get? Sometimes I'll direct them toward there.
Right. Yeah, Help a Reporter Out is very hit and miss because it's so widespread, and a lot of times a lot of the outlets are anonymous. You know, they'll say anonymous, so you don't know where it's going to go. It could be someone who just wants answers to questions, and they may not have a legitimate media outlet. But I mean, U.S. News, the New York Times, they are in there as well. Forbes, Entrepreneur, Business Insider's in there a lot. They're all so if you're not familiar with it, it's called HARO, Help a Reporter Out, and media journalists all over the world will list questions when they're putting together a story because they need an expert comment or quote or opinion on whatever field they're writing about, and everything is covered. I mean, I get their list every day, and I don't check it every day. It depends how busy I am, but I do try to look at it because I have certain clients, some in the healthcare field, and there's a lot in healthcare that's on there. You know, I have a woman who's she's been diagnosed with terminal cancer 12 years ago. She's still alive. She's supposedly, according to her doctors at Johns Hopkins, the only person still alive with her diagnosis. And she gets quoted. I've been able to get her quoted sometimes through Help a Reporter Out that are looking for, you know, cancer survivors and things like that. So it depends on the field, but yeah, it is hit and miss, but it can lead to legitimate stories. So sometimes if you've got time and you know your field, it's worth scanning through to take a look. But they can have listings, you know, it can literally be over 100 listings in a day some days. So you gotta, but they break it out by category, but sometimes it's worth perusing because you never know. It's like, you know, you'll all of a sudden strike gold. It happens.
Thank you, Ed. I appreciate that. I'm sure we all do. And we appreciate your time and your expertise here this morning. If you have additional questions or comments for Ed, feel free. He did put his contact information in the chat. You can save the chat. And Ed, you're welcome to stick around and do some breakout networking with us if you'd like.
Sure.